Hey guys, I'm sorry I'm running a little bit late. I had a meeting that I needed to be at that ran late, so I apologize. And then I got on here, I was trying to test because I feel like I sound like crap because I think I have like a head cold going on. So I apologize for that too. I have had a couple of different ideas about how to do today, but I think that what I'm going to do is we're just going to talk about leaving an abusive relationship. Um, Ray found an article called Leaving an Abusive Relationship, How to Protect Yourself, that was updated March 8th by a woman named Linda Rogers on thehealthy.com that I feel like is pretty good. And so I thought that I would read it and then maybe talk about it. And if you guys have comments or questions, that'd be really cool too. So she breaks it down into 4 steps. Pretty sure 4 steps. Preparing yourself emotionally is step 1. Laying the groundwork is step 2. Get out fast is step 3. And once you're out of the house. Now, some of these things are going to apply if you happen to still be living with or are living with somebody. Other ones may not apply if you're in a romantic relationship with somebody who's abusive, but you don't live together. So we'll kind of talk about that as we go. So step 1, prepare yourself emotionally. Obviously, if you're to the point where you're ready to leave right now, you know you need to leave right now, and you're ready to do that, then you've already done some emotional preparation or your life is in imminent danger right this second. Then don't take the time to do this. Get out. If you can do so safely or to the best of your ability safely, do that. The first thing that they recommend for getting your mind right, because, it says if you've been repeatedly subjected to words and deeds that make you feel worthless and you're too beat down to trust yourself, then it's very hard to muster the courage to leave. Another reason why people don't leave is that they place inaccurate and overwhelming amount of power on this person, believing that this person controls your life, your money, how you see your friends, whether you see your family, how you raise your kids, etc. So they have to realize, the person leaving has to realize that all of those things are false, is what this person named Glass says. Now, I would counter that with some of those things are true. Depending on the situation, some of those things are true. And I don't believe that it does any good to be like, oh, well, these things are false, so we're just going to put them over here. You need to deal with it if that's the reality of your situation. It's kind of like looking at a map, okay? If you have a map of an area, but it doesn't tell you on that map where you are, how are you going to find your way from point A to point B? You have to know the reality of your situation right now, where you're at, before you can formulate a plan on how to get to a different place from where you're at, right? So I disagree with that a little bit, but with the caveat that the point that they're trying to make is that when you come from an abusive relationship, you can get really messed up in your mind about what is reality and what isn't reality. And I think that that's the point that they're trying to make. If you have been told that you don't know anything, that you're stupid, that you can't make good decisions, you have poor judgment, or you've been shown these things over and over and over again over a long period of time, you very well may not trust your ability to make good decisions, your ability to know things, your perception of reality. You can totally 100% and validly not believe that what you see is truth if you have been programmed long enough. You know, it's the same thing that they do in torture situations when people are prisoners of war and things like that. It's a programming. Domestic violence is also, if given enough time. So the goal and point for this whole prepare yourself mentally, prepare yourself emotionally, is to work against that programming that you have every right to have, but it's not helpful for getting out. So their top suggestion, or the first suggestion, is give words to your experience. And then under that, keeping a journal is a way to give words to your experience. So They suggest that people who are about to walk out on an abuser are often able to create a narrative so that they can see what's really going on. So that when they ask them, when is the first time that you felt like you were going crazy? And when is the last time? Then they look to see if the person can actually give words to that experience. And then they can work through that stuff. A journal is a good way to do that. I would not have necessarily thought about it as creating a narrative. I feel like that's a little unnecessary. Like, you're kind of just trying to sound smart. But a journal is a good way for you to get your mind in the right place. If you keep track, and you don't have to use a journal specifically, but keep track of things that they do that are abusive or toxic. Now, you're going to want that for a couple of different reasons. One of them is evidence, but another, as far as the mental, emotional stuff, is so that you can see truth over time. If you have time and you're not in imminent danger, you may look at your relationship and go, this relationship makes me feel bad about myself. I don't necessarily know why. I don't have specific reasons, but it just in general, I feel worse when they're around. I used to feel great when they were around, and over time that changed. And now I just feel like I'm not ever good enough, but you don't know why. Keeping a journal or some type of a list of, okay, today we went to that's not even necessarily, we went to my family's house and he was constantly demeaning me. He was criticizing every idea that I had, and it made me feel like crap. Write that down. Or yesterday he smacked me and told me I was a worthless whore. Write that down. And the more that you write, the more you're going to be able to see the truth. Write down what they say. What they say a lot of times is even more impactful than what they do physically. Not all abuse is physical abuse, but it still counts as domestic violence. In fact, the emotional stuff, the verbal stuff, that is way more effective and long-term and daily than they might hit you, even if they do hit you once in a year or something. Like, obviously it can be a lot more frequent than that, but it doesn't have to be, as long as they keep the mental, emotional stuff in place. The second suggestion they give is realize that your partner won't change. There's a book called Why Does He Do That? That is wonderful for giving perspective on why they do the things that they do and where they're at mentally. It's really good about showing that it's not accidental. In fact, they know exactly what they're doing, and they're twisting reality on purpose to suit their needs. The man that wrote that book, whose name is just completely eluding me right now, if you remember or want to look it up, you can do that in the chat. But he talked about how he has spent tons and tons of time with abusers doing like group therapy sessions and individual therapy, etc. And he believes that the majority of them do not change. So the chances of yours being the one that does are not big. And you need to know that. Does that mean that nobody ever changes? Absolutely not. It is possible. But I feel like we all hold on to the hope that ours is going to change, and that keeps us prisoner for a long time. Sometimes for people's whole lives. Sometimes that's not a long time, but they die having believed that because their partner kills them. So understand that the majority of the time, abusers don't change. The whole domestic violence dynamic, it's a belief system. And in order for somebody to change their beliefs and change the way they behave, they have to actually believe that there's something wrong with what they're doing. And most of them don't. And if they don't believe there's anything wrong with what they're doing, why would they try to fix it? So if something is going to happen, usually there's some kind of an external factor that comes into play that's like They're going to lose you if they don't change. They're going to go to prison if they don't change, etc. Something that's big enough for them to consider, maybe I ought to change. And then they have to actually want to change. They're not changing for you. They're not changing for court. They have to get to a point where they actually want to change because they want to change. If they're not there, and most of them don't ever get there, then they're not going to have what they need to be able to sustain it, even if they change their behavior for a little while to appease somebody or to get you back, whatever the case may be. It's not going to stick. Next thing on there that they have listed is be ready to grieve. And I feel like that is something that people don't talk about a lot. When I got my divorce, I knew 100,000,000% that it was the right thing to do and the best thing for me and my kids, the safest thing, the smartest thing. It was the right thing to do. And I let my relationship go way longer than I should have, to a point where I knew beyond any kind of a shadow of a doubt, I did everything that I could. I could not carry that marriage. It was not an okay thing. It wasn't good. And then I filed for divorce. And the day that I got my divorce, which took almost a year to actually accomplish, I cried on the way home. And most people wouldn't have understood that if they didn't actually think about it, because they're like, you're the one that filed for divorce. You're the one that knew that it was the right thing to do. Absolutely. But I still had to grieve the loss of all of the things that I had put my hope in, all of the dreams for the future that we were going to have that never ended up happening. Grieve the loss of the person that I thought that he was before. Grieve the loss of the partnership and the friendship and the co-parent that I was never going to have, but I thought I did. And I wanted that at one point, and I still had to allow myself to grieve that loss. I wasn't grieving the loss of what I actually ended up with. But people who are unfamiliar with domestic violence, they don't understand, why would you grieve the loss of this person? I was trying to work with a woman who came out of like a 3-year relationship with somebody who had strangled her multiple times. He controlled everything in her life, and he was definitely on track to kill her. And her family rescued her. They went and got her from another state and brought her back after he had assaulted her, one time in particular. She came back, and the family does not understand domestic violence dynamics. So they were giving her a hard time about other stuff that they didn't believe was related, and they didn't understand that they were dealing with a domestic violence victim first, before any of the previous stuff in her life could be dealt with. This was where she was at right now. And because of that, she called him because she didn't feel like she had anybody else, and he had been her savior. He caused the majority of the stuff she needed saving from during this 3 or 4 year period of time, but then he also was the person that she went to, like in general, when they were together. And her family did not understand at all. Why would she call this person? Why would she invite him back into her life after she had left? Well, because he had been in that role. So changing to the grieving thing, you're letting go of that person too. You're letting go of that, the good person that they were before that they changed. You're letting go of the good person that would come out during the honeymoon phases, that would be loving towards you and caring towards you and do nice things for you, whatever that looked like for you within your relationship. You're letting go of that person too. And most people do not realize there's a grieving process. There is. I'm on domestic violence support groups on Facebook, and there's a lot of talk about how hard it is to leave your abuser. And like, that they're abusive, You know that you need to leave, but why is this so hard? Why do I miss them so much? Why do I want it back even though I know that it's bad for me? Well, because if it was 100% bad, people wouldn't stay. There's always good in there too. That's how they keep you. And that part you're going to grieve, and that's okay. But most people don't realize that, and they're not prepared for that. So be aware. Like, it hurts. It hurts to lose this person that you thought that you had. Step 2, lay the groundwork. So if you actually have the time to be there and be relatively safe while you're with an abuser, these are smart things to do. Again, if you're in imminent danger, don't take the time to do this stuff. Just figure out how to get out. The first thing that they list is don't telegraph your plans. Just don't. The fewer people that know, the fewer people can mess it up for you. Accidentally. Maybe they're not even doing it on purpose, but it's not going to slip out somewhere if you are making plans to leave, making plans to get a protection order, etc. The less people you know, the less people who know, the better. Except for within people that are like professional services that are helping you get out. That's not the same thing. But you don't need to tell everybody at work, everybody in your family, etc., about your plans specifically. That's what they're saying. Erase your digital footprint. This is important. Not that the other stuff isn't important, but I'm going to read this. Abusive people typically monitor their partner's personal email, computer, and cell phone, says Glass. Either the account is in their name and they can see who is calling or being called or texted, or they can track your browsing history on a web browser. So as you do your research, to lay the groundwork, whether it's trying to find a domestic violence shelter, talking about moving in with a friend, talking to family members about borrowing money so that you can move out, etc. You need to do this carefully so that your partner can't spy on you and learn your plans. That means using a library or a friend's computer to do research and buying a burner phone that you can pay on a monthly basis, Glass suggests. You can get a brand new phone number, keep it secret, and then throw the thing away when you eventually get out, he says. Glass also recommends hiring a private investigator to scan your car in case your partner has put a GPS tracker on it. Every single time, and I know that might sound bad, but every time that I leave an abusive partner, because unfortunately I've had multiple of them, I get a new phone. There's a lot more that you can do, but I always get a new phone because the chances of them having put something on my phone at some point is decent. You can change all of your passwords. You can go to the extent, you can take this to the extent of creating a false digital footprint as well. Sometimes if you're planning on leaving somebody who's really scary, you can get plane tickets or bus tickets or whatever to go somewhere the complete opposite direction of where you're actually going. You can rent a hotel room somewhere else. You can make appointments with realtors somewhere else and create this false footprint, talk to schools, whatever, where if they check up on you later, they're going to see this trail while you go this way. So this can be very simple to the point of just changing your phone number, or very elaborate depending on how dangerous this person is and how much are they going to continue to try to pursue you? Are they going to let you go and move on to the next person that they can control? There's a huge variance there, and you're going to know better than anybody else what your particular abuser is like. Is he willing to let you go? Does he have so much of his identity tied up in you that it's like, if I can't have you, nobody else will, and it becomes an intimate partner homicide situation like the ones that we look at. Sorry. Because we do so much online anymore, this is super important stuff. Paying cash, store cash. I know financial experts might disagree, but when it comes to domestic violence and leaving an abuser, do stuff that's not traceable, or do stuff to create a false footprint if you can. Go use somebody else's computer. Talk to other people in person if it's possible, instead of through text message or on the phone if you can. Work within what you've got, but as much as you can, figure out ways to do that, the better. There are cameras everywhere. If you're driving a newer car, be aware that it has GPS in it anyway, and they can look into getting a hold of that. But I did a thing a little while back on AirTags, Apple AirTags, which are about the size of a quarter, and they're magnetic, and the battery in them lasts about a year without being charged. And they can drop that anywhere in your car without it being a newer car, new enough to have a GPS system that is already innately there, and they can track everywhere that you go. So I've not ever considered hiring a private investigator to do that. There are also mechanics. This woman was talking on the support group about, she was pretty sure she had a tracker in her car, but she had no idea where to look. And one of the men that was on there was like, I know guys that are mechanics that would probably do that for free. If you explain to them your situation, they would search stuff. There are people that are willing to help. You don't have to do everything by yourself. But it depends a little bit on how much you can communicate. They say pack your bags. I will put a link to the go bag video that I did. I'm sure the quality's not near as good. I don't have as good of lighting in that, and I was way newer to talking on video, but it still gives all of the important information. Smart thing to do is to pack a go bag, maybe a couple of go bags. I personally think it's probably smartest to pack more than one and leave them in different places. One at home, one with somebody else, somewhere else that you can get access to if you need it and you can't get to the one in your home. But in that, you're going to want to have like documentation, like marriage, birth certificates, insurance, ownership papers, things like that, your bank cards or copies of your debit cards and bank cards, things like that. Any type of evidence, if you have evidence, photographs, lists, journals, etc., of the abuse, that's a good thing to have in there. You can do a change of clothes or two, important medicine that you might need, spare glasses or things like that. Toys, a particular toy that's like your child's comfort toy or an important one. However, caveat with that, if you have things that are really emotionally important to you, you can put those in the go bag so that they know, so that you have them to take them with you. However, if you're trying to leave a false trail, and it's something that your abuser knows is really emotionally important to you, and then all of a sudden it's missing because it's in a go bag, that might be an indication to them that you're planning on leaving. And if you leave it, if you can do that, totally dependent on you and your situation and what it is, etc. But if you can leave it, then that might make them believe that you're coming back. And it might give you a little further distance before they start looking for you, because she would never leave this. So clearly she didn't go very far because she would never leave this. So consider that when you're packing your go bag. They say enlist professional allies. So again, if you have time, counselor is super important, a trauma counselor specifically. This is a whole different type of issue than a lot of different things. You need somebody who understands trauma to be able to help you work through the effects of being in an abusive relationship. And they can really help you see the truth when you've maybe been gaslighted for a long time, or you just don't trust your own judgment. They can help you see that. When I first met my first trauma counselor, I knew that my relationship wasn't good, but I didn't realize how bad it was, how dangerous it was, until she and I spent time talking about it, and then I was able to see things that were right in front of me, but I needed somebody else to bounce stuff off of. And obviously, they can be a whole lot more for you than that. Um, Also, people at crisis centers, people who are law enforcement, law enforcement, victim advocates, all of those things are professionals that you can enlist here. Same thing with a lawyer, particularly if you have kids. It's a good idea to consult a lawyer. You don't have to, generally speaking, you don't have to pay a lawyer. Like there's a retainer that you can pay so that you can have a lawyer that is willing and able to come deal with your stuff at a moment's notice kind of thing. But you don't have to pay a lawyer to do a consultation usually. So you can go to a lawyer, present your stuff, and ask their opinions. And a lot of times you can do that for free. That's considered a consultation. That's not the same as them representing you in court. So you can go and talk to them about, I have kids with this abuser. What are the laws in our state? How can I navigate this? What is the best way for me to protect my kids in this? Because kids is one of the biggest reasons people stay in abusive relationships, and validly so. But there are ways that you can get out. Professionals are important. It's a good thing to build up a support system of all of these different people. The more that you have and the more supported you feel, the more empowered you're going to feel to be able to leave. And probably the more safer you're going to be able to do it. Probably. The next thing on here is figure out where you'll go. And that also can be a lot more elaborate. They list the domestic violence shelter Safe Horizon, 1-800-621-HOPE to find a shelter that's near you. You could also call the domestic violence hotline. And I'll put that number on the screen because I don't remember it right offhand. But or your crisis center locally, or the the victim advocate, they all will have resources to be able to tell you where you might be able to go. Things to consider with that are, do you have teenagers? Teenage boys in particular can be difficult depending on the domestic violence shelter specifically. If that's something that you're looking at, sometimes there are restrictions on that. Same with pets. They're both moving, I think, in a positive direction, but they're still really behind. If you're not going to go to a shelter, I would strongly advise that you don't go somewhere where this abuser knows where you're going to be, that they know of this person even. I had people that I had worked with in the past in my safety plan, so that if I needed to go somewhere, they were people that my abuser didn't know anything about, didn't even know they existed, didn't know any connection to us whatsoever, or people that I met in a support group or different things like that that were more anonymous, that these people didn't know. I would not go to my family. I would not go to friends that my abuser knew. That puts those people in danger. It puts you in more danger, your kids, anybody that happens to be around. If they can find you, if they're that type of person, they're going to hurt them and you, or kill you, as obviously is really common with this channel looking at. That's very common. The next thing that they list is be alert to your partner's changes in behavior. And this is important too, and I don't see it talked about a lot. Sometimes abusive partners have this sixth sense, even if you've been careful to cover your tracks. And sometimes people, a lot of times, people don't even think about covering their tracks. I have watched women. That's why if I can put the last several posts that they've done on Facebook in their video when they've been murdered, I do, because some people are very public about like getting stronger as a person. I'm moving on. I'm getting stronger. I'm figuring my stuff out. You don't want to broadcast that either, because with an abuser, when they feel that or see that or hear that, they interpret that as, I'm losing control of this person. And one very strong reaction to that, response to that, is violence. Like, I'm losing control. What am I going to do? They will get very violent, maybe even more violent than they've ever been before. A lot of times that's when murders happen because they're losing control and they don't want to. So I put those pictures, those posts on their Facebook, on the videos so that people can see how the thought process of that person, that victim before they died, how they were getting stronger. There's nothing wrong with getting stronger. You want to do that. That's the whole point of step one with that whole mental, emotional preparation. But you want to be really careful not to show them that. And I don't just mean not show them the journal, but our demeanor changes when we feel like we have more control, when we're taking back that control. And with that person, that's very dangerous. Whether they're still with you or you've broken up, but they're watching you, it can be very dangerous. So be alert to changes in their behavior. Destructive partners want to change your reality. So instead of getting angry and violent, they may start to do nice things like washing dishes, spending time with the kids, paying attention to you. That can be a control tactic. On the other hand, I've had others who were like clean shaven, short hair, well kept when we were together, and then let themselves go when I broke up with them. And that was significant because that spoke to where they were at mentally and emotionally. Pay attention to your partner's behavior and changes in it regardless. You know them. If you've been with an abuser for any amount of time, you have become an expert at reading their emotions, reading their facial expressions, the tones in their voices, the changes in their behavior, all of that. Because your safety and a lot of times your kids' safety is dependent on it. You may not feel like you can trust your judgment when it comes to anything else, but when it comes to this person, you are an expert. So pay attention to changes in their behavior. Be aware of where that might be coming from. Like in the case of them being nice, it's probably a manipulative thing. It's a different type of control, or the violence. And be prepared for that, aware of that, watching for that. It recommends having a code word. You can definitely do that with your support network. That's not something that I've done just because it's difficult to find a code word. And I would love input if anybody else has had a code word and they want to share about that. Obviously, this is stuff that a lot of people don't want to talk about. There's a lot of things I don't talk about on here because I still have people, abusers, that watch my stuff. So when I go back and edit this later and it's not live, I'll cut it down. And the live stuff scares me a little bit because things can slip out when I'm just talking that I wouldn't share normally. You got to be aware of that too. But as far as safe words go, it has to be something that is specifically a safe word that they know. And then you have a plan. Like, if I say this safe word, call the police. It means I'm in danger or whatever. So it has to be something that you don't say all of the time, because otherwise they're going to call the police all of the time. But it has to be something that you don't say all the time, but that when you say it in front of your abuser, it's not going to seem odd to them. Like, they're not going to pick up on it. And I haven't been able to figure out how to do that, honestly. If you stay, it lists if you stay for any amount of time in an abusive relationship with somebody that you live with, then identify a secure room in your home. Basically just a place that you can go if they get violent, where you can attempt to be safer. And the recommendations for that are somewhere that's got an exit. You don't want to make that your bathroom, because usually bathrooms have one entrance and one exit. And so then you're stuck and you're backed into a corner. So something that has an exit, even if it doesn't have a second door, if it has a window that you can jump out of if you absolutely have to, you just want to give yourself that option. It's also smart to have a burner phone in that room that you've designated as your safe room. It doesn't have to have phone service. It just needs to be charged. You can call 911 with a phone without any phone service on it. So it's not like you got to pay to keep phone service on it. It's a smart thing to have in your safe room too. Weapons would be a good thing to have in your safe room, but not necessary. But this is a place where you can attempt to put some space in between the two of you. The worst place in your house that you can go if somebody is being violent is your kitchen. Don't do that either. Bathroom's bad because you can't get away. Kitchen's bad because there's lots of things that they can use as a weapon against you. So kitchen's not the safe room. Bathroom's not the safe room. Bedroom's fine. Step 3, I really enjoyed this. Get out fast. And there's like a short paragraph, and that's it, about get out fast. But the main point that they make in this is pick a safe time, not the right time. They say there's no right time to leave, so it comes down to finding a safe time, which usually is sometime when you're home and your partner's either at work or out with friends or visiting family. You need to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. They said especially under COVID, where everyone is just sort of stuck at home and you're never sure when your partner is going out. And some places that still may be way more true. I happen to live in a place where we have a lot less restrictions with COVID than some places, but the whole go bag concept is great for being ready to leave at a moment's notice. The more professionals, the more support network that you can already have in place is great for being able to leave at a moment's notice. They're just meaning if there's a time when they're looking one direction and you can leave the other way, then do it. Particularly if it gets to an imminent violence standpoint. And even if you haven't done the other stuff, even if you don't have a support group or support network, even if you don't have a go bag, if you're in imminent danger, then you need to do that. The lady that I did a video on last week was killed at work. A lot of people die at work. I haven't necessarily, or on the way to work, or things like that. I haven't necessarily highlighted that in particular, but that's another thing to consider as far as like, where are you going to go when you leave? Can you get to work? Can your kids get to school? Do you even still want to continue to do that in the same place? Because if your abuser knows where you work, they know where you go. They know when you're going to be there, where you're going to be, and that's an excellent place to hunt you if they want to kill you. Like an excellent way to do that. So you might consider changing your job. You might consider changing your kids' schools if they might be in danger if they stay, depending solely on your situation. So in that situation, they worked together in the same building, even after she had a protection order against him. And I don't have all the details, obviously, because I just do this stuff off of news articles and things I'm able to find on social media and stuff like that. But I wouldn't do that. And I would have the stance where if that person comes in, I already have a safety plan in place. The people in my work know that they're dangerous. Like in the past, I've taken a picture to my kids' schools and to my church and places that I would frequent. I've taken a picture in and said, this person is a danger. They are not to be around my kids. They are not to be around me. If they show their face here, it's not for good things. Everybody needs to be aware of this. And the second that he walked in, I'd have been doing my safety plan and been gone. You need to do that. And she died terribly. And unfortunately, so many people knew what was going on. It just breaks my heart. Step 4, once you're out of the house, keep your whereabouts a secret. Again, the fewer people that know, the less people that can screw that up, even accidentally. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to just run to him to tell him where you are, but they might slip up. They might say something that might come to where you are. One time I had a friend that came to a safe house that I was staying at, and I don't mean safe house like a shelter. It was somebody's house that I knew that we stayed at, and I made them park blocks away and walk and be aware of their surroundings the whole time to be able to go to where we were for their safety, for our safety, for the people whose house we were staying at safety. Like they weren't just gonna have had their car associated with us in our house before and then pull up to somebody else's house. I wasn't going to put people in danger like that. So keep your whereabouts a secret. Says file the restraining order. If you're going to file a restraining order, you don't want to do that when you're still living in the same house. That's a bad plan. So that'd be something to do once you get out, if you believe that they'll honor it. If there is something in their life, in their situation, that makes that a strong enough deterrent for them to honor it. Maybe they respect the law, so they won't do that. It's not super likely, but maybe. Maybe they already have a criminal record, and if they get in trouble for violating the protection order, then they're going to go to prison for a long time. There's something there that is big enough consequences that they'll honor it. Otherwise, don't do it. And you're going to know that you know this person. Sometimes that is the thing that sets them off, and then it's fatal. Lots of people get murdered with protection orders. It's just a piece of paper. It's not going to save you. So if there's not other things in place that are going to protect you, you can't just depend on that. But don't do that when you're living with them. Stop all contact with your partner. It says if they still have the same phone and they text you, you cannot respond under any circumstances. If they call, if they send a message through a mutual friend, any contact with this person will be the first piece of information they use to try to find you. Besides, having any contact means that you'll just encourage them to keep calling or texting. If the abuser doesn't hear from you at all, then it's a lot less likely that they'll continue persisting eventually. They didn't say eventually, I'm putting that in there. They'll persist for a certain amount of time, and then in essence, they'll move on to their next victim. They start looking for the next person that they're going to control. And I would agree with that. If you have a stalker, the worst thing that you can do is respond. You don't want to do that. Your silence is a response. Now, obviously, this whole stop all contact with your partner is complicated and murky when you have children together. But you can still say, I'm only going to communicate with you about the kids and nothing else. That way they don't feel like you're jerking their feelings around, anything like that. It's an extremely combustible situation. It's like you're operating like there are landmines all over. And you can say the wrong thing and not even realize it, and that can be bad. No contact is best. You don't want to go back. Have somebody or multiple somebodies that can be support for you, including the Facebook domestic violence support groups. That's an amazing resource. They're not something that you can just get in. Like you have to get approval by their administration to be able to get in as an attempt to help abusers not be able to get in. But it's great to have people that you can go to and you can say, I'm really missing them right now. I really want to contact them right now, because that's normal. 100% normal. Have somebody else that you can go to at that time that can talk you down or can distract you so that you don't reach out and you don't make contact, because it's not safe to do that. It's not a good idea. I have a personal friend who felt like she needed closure in her relationship. And so she would be fine until she got drunk, but she'd get intoxicated, and then she would want to message this person to reach out because she just didn't like the way that it ended. She felt bad. She cared about this person. But they interpreted that as she was sort of like she was unwilling to let them go, and she just wanted to torment them, which wasn't it at all. But I told her, you need to stop poking the bear. Stop doing that. And eventually they got scary. They were scary. And she had to take home security precautions and stuff. They had lived together before. She was trekking down the road of the different women that I highlight their stories on here. And she eventually got to the point where she was like, okay, I'm done. I will not contact them anymore. And it was multiple contacts after I had told her she needed to stop originally. I was really concerned for her. And he has eventually kind of laid off, but it's taken a while. I have people that have contacted me after years and years, previous abusers. So I don't know how much faith I have in the idea that they go away entirely. Probably none. Maybe some people's do, but and they'll go get distracted by somebody else if they can find a different victim that they can control. But I don't know that they ever really 100% take their claws out unless you move away and totally get out of that situation. I would love to know your experience with that. Have you been able to totally cut off somebody and them not try to contact you? And how long did that take? I'm just curious. Two more says, don't leave clues. Don't forward any bills, update your driver's license with your new address, etc. in anything that they're going to be able to find. You can't do any of these things because those things make it easier for someone to track you down. Just having a cell phone number and finding one utility bill that's been forwarded is usually enough for me to track down someone I'm trying to search. And so if I, as an attorney, can do it, an abuser can probably do the same thing, he says. Later, when you have a permanent order, you can make that change. And you still want to be cautious. When you're leaving, and the first 12 months after you leave are the most dangerous time. So it really freaks me out for people in the support group when they're like, I'm out. I finally left. Yes, freedom is so great. And I'm like, honey, you are so just at the very beginning of this. And it's great that you leave. Fantastic. Definitely do that. I'm definitely a supporter. But don't believe that the second that you get out, once you get away, you're safe. The first year, bare minimum, expect that there's a possibility for them to come after you. Just plan that way. And then if they don't, fantastic. You didn't have to worry about it. But don't be one of those people that believes that you're safe as soon as you get away and then is unpleasantly surprised when they show up and hurt you or kill somebody that you're close to. Every week doing the videos is hard. Every week seeing more people murdered that I wish that I could have helped, that I wish that I could have gotten through to, but I didn't. That's hard anyway. And then seeing their kids murdered is even harder. Or their sister, or their mother, or their friend that happened to be there at the time, or complete strangers who had nothing to do with it and just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or they happen to be a good Samaritan of such and try to intervene and try to help protect somebody. All of these people are in danger too. And the last thing that they have on their list is be prepared to call 911. If, God forbid, your abuser shows up where you are, shows up to your work, or sees you on the street, then you've got to call 911 immediately and say, I have a restraining order. This person is near me. I need help immediately. And then I would take that a couple of steps further. I've definitely called and they've been like, well, they're on the street. It's public property. Or they're in a parking lot. It's public property. You run into that too. So just be aware of that. And be willing and able to protect yourself. Because if they show up, I like how he said, God forbid, because that sucks. But if they show up and you call 911 and you let them know you need help immediately, they do not just snap your fingers and poof, there's an officer there, unless they happen to be right there anyway. It's going to take time for them to get to you, which means that you need to be willing and able to protect yourself against a threat until they get there. If you're able to get to your phone, probably part of your safety plan should be to have 911 on speed dial. if you're leaving an abuser. That way it's just a button that you click because you may not have a lot of time. If somebody comes out and pulls a gun, you have, what, a second, a half a second. Some people think that knives are easier, but if somebody's charging at you, it's still really fast. So you need to be able to protect yourself. I hope that this was helpful. I had kind of looked at, because it is income tax return season, I was kind of trying to look at different safety weapons and safety devices that I can maybe recommend. And so I Googled like personal defense and home security and things like that. And they come up with about the same stuff every time. And the majority of the personal defense stuff that comes up when you search personal defense, I believe is fairly worthless. It's like, if you have nothing else, then those are the things. But like they've got the brass knuckles types of stuff and brass knuckles with points. And there was a ring with a point on it that you could flip up that was like stainless steel or something like that. Ooh, super cool. You don't want, if you can avoid it, you don't want close combat. All of those things are close combat type of things. They've got pokers and stuff like that. They're going to have to be within a couple of feet of you or really, really close to you in order for you to use any of those weapons. And you are really in danger if they're that close to you. You don't want them to be able to get that close to you. Pepper spray, pepper foam. I think that pepper gel is the same thing as pepper foam. Basically, those are more long-range weapons, depending on what you're getting. Firearms. A knife is, again, close proximity weapons. A baseball bat would be smarter, in my opinion, than the others. Granted, you're not going to carry a baseball bat around with you everywhere that you go walking down the streets, but so then they've got batons for that. You can buy a baton that will extend and you can beat people like what in movies police have. I don't know if they actually carry those all the time or not, but that'll at least give you a couple feet maybe. But you don't want somebody that's close enough for this. They used to recommend, and you can, that you carry your keys sticking out of your fingers in a fist. If you're like walking at night and you're a woman by yourself, you shouldn't be walking by yourself at night most of the time if you're a woman anyway. It's just not smart. It's not safe. And that sucks. You can be all feministy if you want to. And so I have the right to do this. You have every right to do it, but it's not smart. But if you have somebody that's that close to you that's going to be helpful for, they're very close to you. And you run the risk of damaging the inside of your hand doing that. And if you don't strike them somewhere where it counts with that, like in the eye, like driving a key into somebody's eye or into their throat, maybe. Like think about how much damage that's going to do. If you got a key or brass knuckles and you hit them in the shoulder, then you're going to piss them off. And then they're going to hurt you. But they were going to hurt you anyway. They just might do it a little more violently this time because they're pissed. It's not helpful. Pepper spray, a lot of times is not helpful for indoors because it goes everywhere. So pepper foam or gel, I think there's a gel too, but those are more weighty. They only go where they're supposed to go and they don't go anywhere else. If you can find that. Firearms training is definitely a good plan if you're in a situation like this, but you have to have your head right regardless of what you have. Otherwise you're not going to use it. Like I was armed for years and I wouldn't have probably used it unless my kids' lives were in danger because mentally I didn't believe I was worth it to defend. And I didn't want to hurt other people. And you have to get to a mental place where you're not hurting innocent people. You're hurting somebody that's going to hurt or kill you. You have to get there mentally. That's not a natural thing. That is, there's a book called When Violence is the Answer that has a whole big section. I don't remember if it's half of it, but it's a big section about changing your mentality so that it doesn't harm you. Because otherwise, if you have a weapon and you don't have the mentality to use it, then you're more likely to have that weapon turned against you and it be used on you, which puts you in more danger. It's not helpful. So I don't, long story short, I don't have any that I really, really recommend right now as far as stuff that if you search personal defense, you can find on Google. There are some things, if I did a more in-depth search, pepper foam would be a recommendation. You can carry a knife with you. Any of those things that are close proximity weapons are better to carry than nothing, so that if somebody was to attack you and was right there in your face, then you can use it. But the point is, you don't want them to get that close if you can avoid it. The more close they are, the more danger you're in, like imminent danger. However, they could shoot you from a distance, and then none of that's going to work. As far as home defense goes, cameras are good and important. Lots of people have died with cameras anyway. They're good for documenting what happens for people to look back on later. If they're a deterrent, that's fantastic. If you need a deterrent and you're broke, there are dummy cameras that you can get that look like real cameras. The ones that I used to have even they had batteries, and so they had a light that flashed that made it look like there was power to them, and there wasn't. But it was enough of a deterrent to stop some people. But it just depends on the person. Alarms are good. Those kinds of things are going to let you know that somebody's there that shouldn't be there. And sometimes they're a deterrent. Having a good sturdy baseball bat is a good thing. Shotguns are the primary recommended home defense weapon. Not me personally. I don't like shotguns, but that's experts would say that's your number one. There are things that you can do. And if you move out, you want to do those things. That needs to be part of your safety plan. And if you are living with your abuser, then your safety plan needs to be changed for that situation, because you can still have a safe room in your home. You can still have a burner phone. Even if it doesn't have phone service, you can still have a weapon that you can get to in the event that you need it. Even if your safety plan is, I have some pepper spray or pepper foam that I'm going to spray in their eyes, grab my bag, and run like a mad woman. If you guys have any questions, feel free to get a hold of me. You can email me at staff@aprilhardy.com, or you can wow. Or you can comment below. I like to be able to read you guys' comments. I try to respond to any of them that are not derogatory, because I have a few of those too. But actually, we do pretty well on here. We haven't attracted a whole lot of jerky people yet. There are some. And I try not to post the majority of those, because people that are in these situations, they don't need to be discouraged with that garbage. But I love hearing from you. I hope that you are well and safe, and that I get to see you and talk to you again soon. Bye.